This week's presentation will be on minimum wage and inflation by Chad Zellmer. First off, we start with inflation rates in the United States. Inflation is a general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. Items go up in price, money is not as valuable as it once was. The chart on this page shows the United States and European markets rate of inflation. In the green is the United States and in the red is the European nations. On average, the inflation rate per year has gone up almost 3.8%. In the past 50 years, the inflation rate has only been negative once, and that was in 2009 at negative 0.36%. In 1960, the inflation rate was 1.46%, while the majority of the world did not start to measure inflation. It wasn't until 1980 where the majority of the world started keeping track of inflation, which also the highest year of the United States had of 13.55%. In 1979, the United States started to enter recession, as did the majority of the world. The main reason this happened was because of the energy crisis, which caused oil prices to rise severely. In 2021, the United States inflation rate was 4.7%, which is almost double what the European nation was. Overall, in the past 50 years, inflation has caused a price increase of almost 830%. To put this into perspective, an item that cost $1 in 1960 would cost almost $10 today. Now on to minimum wage. The chart on the left shows the percentage of workers who were hourly that made minimum wage. As you can see, in 1980, which is also the height of the recession, the amount of the minimum wage hourly workers was the highest at 15%. Since then, more and more companies have had less employees making minimum wage. According to USA Facts, the workers in 1980 that were making minimum wage was 7.7 million workers, while in 2019 that number dropped to 1.6 million. One reason that caused this is because individual states stepped in and started minimum wages at higher levels than the federal minimum wage. While this is not true for every state, it accounts for why the federal level would be lower today. The chart on the right accounts for the minimum wage was in relation to inflation. The blue line shows what the wages would be equivalent to today versus then. While minimum wage was only $2.90 an hour in 1979, it would be equivalent to over $10 an hour in today's market. In 1978 through 1981, minimum wage raised each year starting at $2.65 in January of 1989 to $3.35 in January of 1981. By April of 1991, minimum wage went up to $4.25 an hour. In July of 2009, minimum wage rose to $7.25 per hour, where it currently is today. Minimum wage has remained the same for the past 13 years, while the price of goods and services as well as the cost of living has gone up. The new federal minimum wage that would propose would be $14.50 for workers above the age of 18 and $12 an hour for workers under the age of 18, with some exclusions such as those who work for tips. My proposal would mandate that a dollar an hour wage increase would happen yearly for the next 5 years to help offset the cost of living and increased inflation prices. Since the pandemic, we are seeing material costs at a record high cost, as well as currently gasoline prices upwards of $5 an hour and are constantly rising. The current minimum wage is not a wage that the average worker could live off of. There are both positive and negative effects that increase the minimum wage could have. First off, with employees being paid more, it would certainly increase current employee morale. Those struggling to make ends meet in the current wage would benefit from the burden of financial relief. The wage would be set closer to the rise of inflation rates versus the wage being separated more and more by increased prices, and it would help relieve employees' burden from not seeing a yearly increase. The downfall is that the customers will likely see the cost handed down to them from the employers. To avoid having to pay the annual increase, employers may also elect to turn over more employees. Finally, the standout employees may not see the benefit for those that do par or subpar work. In conclusion, minimum wage rates have increased as inflation rates have increased, and it is time that we look strongly into doing it again. As the cost of living continues to increase, individuals need to find a way to be able to support themselves, and increasing minimum wage will help do that. By increasing the federal minimum wage, it also helps states form unity on a wage that they can feel comfortable with versus having to form their own wages. A lot of people would benefit from a wage increase, which ultimately may help boost the economy in a struggling time. Here are my references.